Hello there. What is going on, everybody? The Mandalorian and Grogu are coming to the big screen. That's right, folks. Star Wars is returning to movie theaters. This is, not exactly big news to a lot of people because we do know from last year's Star Wars celebration that more Star Wars movies were planned. But this is the first announcement of a specific movie that we've seen from Star Wars in a while, and it's a slight departure of what we knew was coming, but not really that much of a departure. We know that the Mandalorian and Grogu's story has kind of wrapped up into a nice sort of like topped off with a bow, and kind of nice sort of ending. And we also know that Dave Filoni had announced that sort of an Avengers style movie was going to be coming, where it was going to be everything from what they're calling the Mandoverse, the Mandalorian's universe, with everything that's kind of had cameos there, everything from Book of Boba Fett, the Mandalorian, Ahsoka, all of that is going to be sort of coming together in a movie, but now we have some specifics. So basically, Jon Favreau will be directing this movie. It's going to be produced by Jon Favreau, Kathleen Kennedy, and Dave Filoni. So the usual suspects, a lot of the folks who brought you everything that you've been seeing, according to Disney Plus and everything in the recent years. So this is going to go in production this year in 2024. Now, what that means is we're probably not going to be seeing this film for at least 2 years, hopefully maybe a little longer. They have had plenty of time to build it up, though. So I want to hear from you guys. What are some things that you want to see from a movie like The Mandalorian and Grogu? Do you think that's actually going to be the title? I have a feeling that's a working title right now and might not actually reflect the full title. There's some quotes here. Favreau says, "I have loved telling stories set in the rich world that George Lucas created," said Favreau. "The prospect of bringing the Mandalorian and his apprentice Grogu to the big screen is extremely exciting." And Kathleen Kennedy goes on to say that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have ushered into Star Wars two new and beloved characters, and this new story is a perfect fit for the big screen, added Kathleen Kennedy, president of Lucasfilm. The article announcing this goes on to say that The Mandalorian and Grogu will lead Lucasfilm's ongoing feature development slate, including films helmed by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, James Mangold, and Dave Filoni, who is also developing Ahsoka Season 2, among those in the works. This is the way. Now, a couple of big takeaways from this, beyond the fact that it's a Mandalorian movie, which is already a big draw, is the fact that they said Ahsoka Season 2. The reason I say that's a big deal is because a lot of people were thinking that Ahsoka's second season, or the final conclusion to that storyline, was going to be the movie, that they weren't going to do a whole nother season, that they were just going to do Heir to the Empire, the movie, and that's was going to be the conclusion of that. But now we do have word officially that Ahsoka is going into Season 2. Now, this is something a lot of people have assumed, but it's good to get that clarification, especially when we did think that there was a chance for that extra movie to come out and for us not to get a Season 2. Now, there's a whole lot to unpack with all of this. I think one of the interesting things is the particular image they're showing here. It looks like Mandalorian's getting ejected or flying away from in space. It looks like he's in space. It looks like he's flying away from an exploding X-Wing. Like the front of this looks like it could be an X-Wing or maybe a Z-95, but I'm thinking an X-Wing. So what is this meant to imply that maybe he gets into trouble with the New Republic, and folks like Carson Teva and Trapper Wolf are like no longer trying to help him anymore? Is this movie going to kind of pick up where Ahsoka Season 1 left off? Is the Mandalorian going to get involved with Grand Admiral Thrawn, and of course the larger story that's all kind of wrapping up and coming together? And I think that's a really good question to ask, and something that we kind of can begin speculating a little bit on what could this movie really do, because if you're caught up on Mandalorian and Mandalorian Season 3, the story sort of came to a close. It's not a complete end, because there's really no end to anything. No one's ever really gone. But the story sort of wrapped up. We have good closure to all the big story arcs that Mandalorian had opened, or at least most of them. And there are some small threads that could still be opened. There's always that question of, is Cara Dune still out there? Is she going to come back involved? Is he going to go back to maybe having more to do with his fear of droids, or is he completely resolved in that? I feel like that was mostly resolved. What's going to happen with Grogu? I think Grogu has the most open arcs. Is Grogu going to end up, wanting to go back to more Jedi training, or is he going to fully embrace the Mandalore? Is he going to be a hybrid? Is he going to be a Mandalorian Jedi? I feel like that's really the question that's being opened. If you've watched Ahsoka, is Sabine like the first Mandalorian Jedi to come out, or is Grogu going to be, deemed the first Mandalorian Jedi? I feel like it's Sabine if you've been watching the shows, and if they're happening along the same timeline, it could go one of different ways, and it really depends on which you feel happened first. Because from a certain point of view, I feel like Grogu was the first Mandalorian Jedi, at least going back since Tar Vizsla, who created the Darksaber. But I feel like you could also easily say that it's Sabine. So I guess it really is going to be one of those questions that's better answered by someone like Pablo Hidalgo or somebody from the Lucasfilm Story Group on like who is the first Mandalorian Jedi of the modern era? Because a lot of people were saying it's Sabine, but I think it's been Grogu all along. Because he's kind of walked in both worlds. He was a Jedi first and then became a Mandalorian, whereas Sabine was a Mandalorian first and then became a Jedi. So it's very interesting, and I'm curious what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments section. What do you think is going to happen with this movie? Are you excited to see The Mandalorian on the big screen? Do you think this is going to be like the first of several new movies in this timeline? Because we already know that Rey is getting a movie about the future Jedi Order, and then there's also some prequel movies going far back in time with the dawn of the Jedi. But there's also some more Disney Plus series coming, Skeleton Crew, and that's I think the next one that's coming. I'm really excited about that one because is it going to feature more ships? There's so many questions to ask and so very, very little information that's really put out in this news article with The Mandalorian and Grogu going to be filming and coming to theaters probably 2026 is my guess. I feel like that's a reasonable time frame based on how long it took them to make the other movies. It was about a two-year wait. But there's a little part of me that says maybe they should take their time and pay a little bit more time. Maybe it should be a 2027 release. But then at the same time, I'm like, but at least in this case, they've already got all the backstory done. So is that a really good thing? And that's where I want to kind of conclude this video is I'm kind of excited about this because granted, movies sometimes are very divisive with the community. Sometimes they're just a good time. And especially if you go into it with the intent of having a good time, I'm sure you're going to eat your popcorn and have a great time. But this is one of those times where they've already got all the backstory out of the way. They can assume that the audience is already familiar with these characters, at least the main characters, and they can get right into the story without having to spend the first half of the movie just being introductions and backstory. So they can really jump right into the action and make this a good 2-hour movie of all awesome stuff. Plus the higher budget of being able to do a movie means they could do some really fantastic stuff, and I'm really hoping that if they do have the Mandalorian get involved in Grand Admiral Thrawn's fight, that means we do see some capital ship combat. Would love to see a Mandalorian take on how to fight a giant fleet like what Grand Admiral Thrawn is certainly amassing. I want to hear from you guys, though. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. You can also check social media in our Discord. All that stuff is in the video description below. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are out of this world and help make this whole channel possible. I will talk to you later. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. This is the way. The spice must flow. So say we all, and always wash your socks.